Hello, folks. Welcome back to another case study where I discuss and analyze some of the strangest state and national park missing person cases out there. Before we get underway, I thought I'd let you know that I'm currently working on our next volume of cases, Volume 25, and you can expect to see it in the near future. Thanks to all the folks who have sent me new leads and for updating us all on the cases that I've covered so far. There's just so many now, and it can be quite difficult to keep tabs on all of them. That's where you come in. It's a team effort, and I appreciate what you've done. I also wanted to thank everyone for their patience during my move across the U.S. Things are finally beginning to fall into place, and I'm getting settled in just fine. I'll let you know more about it in the coming months. So let's get to the subject at hand. I'm going to be talking about a case that occurred in July of 1991 that involves the disappearance of a 13-year-old boy who vanished inside the San Bernardino National Forest during an overnight hiking trip to the summit of San Gorgonio Mountain in California. There's a lot of strangeness surrounding this case, which is why I decided to cover it. As a former scout myself, I connected with this case right from the start, and even after 27 years, I'm still completely perplexed by it, and I'm not alone. On the morning of Friday, July 19th, 1991, a group of around a dozen Boy Scouts set off to climb the summit of Mount San Gorgonio during an overnight backpacking trip. For many of the Scouts, this was their first overnight hiking trip, including that of a 13-year-old scout named Jared Negrete. Throughout the course of the day, the group spent hours hiking several miles up the mountain, and everything seemed to go smoothly. That was, until the group was making their final stretch to the summit, and that's where things took a turn for the worse. Although there are conflicting reports, it is thought that around 6 p.m. that day, the scout leader was notified by another group of hikers that one of his scouts was straggling behind. At this point, the group was pretty much at the summit, and a head count was taken of all the scouts. The leader noticed that everyone was accounted for except for Jared. So almost immediately, after this observation, he collected the group and they began descending, searching and calling out for him, expecting to find him resting or trying to catch up. But as they made their way back down to base camp, there was no sign of Jared. Once at the camp, the leader decided to hike out to call for help by his lonesome. At around midnight, he made contact with park officials, and this kicked off one of the largest search and rescue operations in the park's history. Now, before I get into more specifics behind the search, I wanted to talk a little bit about the mountain itself, just to give you an idea of what the search and rescue and even Jared was up against. San Gorgonio Mountain, which is also known as Old Grayback, is the highest peak in Southern California, and the transverse ranges at 11,500 feet. It is in the San Bernardino Mountains, and about 30 miles east of the city of San Bernardino. It lies within the San Gorgonio Wilderness and managed by the San Bernardino National Forest Park System. Every year, thousands of hikers filter into the area for camping, hiking, and other recreational activities. During the summer months, temperatures can spike at around 90 plus during the day and drop to near freezing at night. On the day Jared vanished, daytime temperatures were noted at being around 65 to 80 degrees, but by night they had fallen to mid to lower 50s. There are a number of established trails in the park, and every year, several hikers are reported missing, but are eventually located soon thereafter. The eighth grader, who was from El Monte, California, was approximately 5 feet 2 inches tall and 150 pounds, and was considered a bit overweight. Despite this, his fellow scouts noted that Jared had kept up with the group and were surprised to learn that he had fallen behind when they did. The troop leader stated that Jared was in good spirits and looking forward to taking some photos from the summit. On the day he went missing, he was wearing a standard troop uniform, green pants, and a tan shirt. He was also carrying a backpack that contained a 2-quart water canteen, snacks, and a disposable camera. When the search kicked off in the early hours of July 20th, park officials joined forces with surrounding search and rescue outfits from nearby counties, and they began searching a 130 square mile area of the mountain where Jared was last seen. A few hours into the search, and with no clues, more teams from as far away as Sierra Madre and San Dimas joined the effort. By 9 a.m., hundreds of people were searching that area, and over the course of a couple days, they would expand their efforts outside the initial search zone and into the dense forest and rugged terrain of that mountain. At least 70 officers, some of who were assisted by helicopters into difficult areas, were deployed. Several dog teams and rangers on horseback were utilized as well as infrared technology by several aircraft. By day 3, hundreds of volunteers joined the search, and it was on this day they found their first and only clue. The search was focused on a 6 square mile area where a footprint believed to match one of Jared's tennis shoes was found. It wasn't long after that searchers discovered beef and candy wrappers believed to have been dropped by the scout. But the last item they found was Jared's disposable camera. I was unable to find any information as to how far from the trail they found these belongings, as this would have given us a better idea of which direction Jared may have taken, or even how far he may have gotten. So in that camera, authorities discovered that only 12 photos were taken on the roll, and here's what they showed. Most of the photos were landscape scenes, apparently taken before Jared went missing, but the final picture on the roll was a close-up of Jared's eyes and nose, taken with the flash setting, telling authorities it was most likely taken that night after he went missing. Those who knew him believed he may have taken the picture himself after getting lost, but investigators believe he may have accidentally taken the photo by using the flash feature to find his way through the darkness, especially given that some of the photos on that roll showed nothing but darkness. Nonetheless, the camera was the last piece of evidence they would ever find of Jared, and even after 27 years, no new information has come forward. The search would continue on for another 2 weeks, involving more than 3,000 folks and logging in more than 45,000 hours, scouring 50 square miles of the San Bernardino National Wilderness, from Angela's Oaks to Whitewater Canyon. After this, the official search began to wind down and eventually ended altogether. So let's discuss what may have happened to Jared. Now, with all the information that we have at our fingertips, let's figure out what are the most likely and unlikely scenarios we're looking at. And these are just my own opinion, but I encourage all of you to share your theories with us in the comment section below. Scenario 1. Jared took the wrong trail. In an effort to keep up with the other group, it's possible, when they were out of sight, he may have ventured down the wrong path. All it takes is one fork in the road and one wrong decision. At this point, he may have hunkered down as the night set in, exhausted and weary. It was at this point he ate all the food he had left, and in the process of getting back on the trail, took another wrong path, and who knows what happened from there. We really don't know whether Jared was carrying a flashlight or not, but it makes sense that he could have used that camera's flash feature to try and see his way around. But anyone with a camera knows how much battery power it takes to utilize that feature, and it's not hard to imagine he couldn't have gotten far in the dark considering this. Scenario 2. Jared was taken by someone or something. We don't know how many other hikers were in that area during that day when he disappeared, but considering the time of year, weather, and the location, you can bet there were quite a few other hikers out there taking advantage of that trail as well. In fact, a smaller group had notified the troop leader that one of his scouts had been lagging behind. Unfortunately, I was unable to find where exactly on that trail he was notified of this, but evidence seems to point that it was near the summit. What I want to know is how far behind was Jared when the two groups met? Why didn't the smaller group stop to help if Jared was indeed struggling? It's possible the group didn't feel the situation called for it, and that he was close enough to the others. Is it possible that someone out there, someone with bad intentions, came across the boy and did something to him? If so, I can't imagine it being too easy to get away with it. Jared was way up there on that trail, and anyone looking to kidnap him would have had a hell of a time doing it. And even if there was foul play involved, searchers would have found some evidence to support this. Now, let's consider animal predation. The same thing applies here. Search dogs and personnel would have most likely discovered evidence of this, but nothing was found to back this up. And finally, Scenario 3. Jared made his own way back down that mountain. It is possible that the scout took it upon himself to head back down on his own accord, and then something happened to him. If so, how far down did he make it, and what happened to him when he got there? You may also be asking, what about the camera and candy wrappers? Well, sources don't exactly tell us where the searchers found those items, but we can assume it wasn't far from the trail. Then we need to ask how those items got there. Did Jared leave them there himself? Did he drop them along the trail, only to have animals take them to that location? Were those items handled by someone else on that trail? It's not too hard to imagine that if Jared was tired of going up that mountain, then he may have decided going down was easier. And he may have been too afraid to stay there by himself any longer if nobody else was around, even though that he knew they would eventually return. He may have also eaten those items and dropped the camera by accident on his way down. Being tired and weary, it's not hard to imagine this happening. What about the self-portrait? Well, we don't really know when it was taken. People only assumed it was after he had gotten lost because it looked dark in the photo. But we all know that the forest can be a naturally dark environment, and if you use your flash on top of that, it can make things look even darker. And if anybody's played with the flash feature on their phone or on their camera, then sometimes activating the flash feature will drown out everything else, creating the illusion that it was dark when it was not. So after looking at all these scenarios, there's a whole lot to consider on so little information. And as the years go on, unless there are new leads in the case, we'll only get further and further away from the truth of what occurred up there on that mountain. What do you all think happened to Jared? I'd like to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and may we never forget the sad and strange disappearance of Jared Negrete.